How did that come about then? How did you get that?
I was under the impression that something was happening. I didn't know if it was going to be a tour or a show or it was just a Sabbath. I knew something was happening at Sabbath. Yeah, it was 2008 when Kiss were playing. The first deadline for download used to be the following week's Kerrang. So I've done it. It's gone off. I remember that night. You know, you finish a bit late and you're like, I'm so pleased it's over and approved. I'd gone to the pub to meet a friend and I literally hit the first drop of lager touched my lip and my phone rang. And it was Andy and he was like, mate.
You've mentioned before that you had a couple near-death experiences
yeah.
with one at download.
Yeah. People tell you these things happen in slow motion and it's absolutely 100% true. As we're spinning, there's a 18-wheeler coming towards us. You know the Final Destination movies?
Yeah.
It was exactly like that. Exactly like that. And I looked at this thing and I was like, well, that's that then. You know, this is a story that people will tell. The only time I've ever managed to blank side of stage, to watch Pantera from the side of the stage. And I'm looking out at the crowd in the sunshine. I thought for every tour I've worked on, that was a pain in the arse. Any promoter that was ever rude to me or like spoke down to me or any time where the job wasn't enjoyable, it was worth it for that moment.
Hey, welcome back to another episode. Before we really get into it, I want to mention that we've just released a vlog. We show you behind the scenes of everything it is, putting this together, taking it to London, filming in different locations, some of the costs that are involved in doing that, and all the difficulties of actually just booking people and moving things around and making it happen. So if you're interested in what goes into putting the podcast together, then check out the vlog. We'll put it on the screen now. It's available on YouTube. Go and watch that now if you're interested in everything it takes to make a podcast. Let's get to the episode.
I guess the first question then, as always, is how did you get started?
How did I get started? It was kind of a roundabout way in, really. I mean, when I finished school, I didn't do great and I had the bare minimum so you could go and do like a BTEC in something. I started sixth form and got asked to leave after a couple of months because I was a bit disruptive. I'd signed on to do it because I didn't know what else to do with myself, really. And then I looked into diplomas in media and other things and saw graphic design and art and comic illustration was my thing at the time as a teenager. So I ended up going to college in Wandsworth and it was so that was 91 and it was a real kind of change over time in designing that a lot of the things we learned were like photography and lecture sets, sort of cut and paste kind of things and silk screen printing, sort of old fashioned skills, which were great. But, you know, you got sort of an hour on a Mac once a week and that was about it. So when I finished that up after 2 years, like for family reasons, my dad was self-employed. He was a black cab driver and he wasn't so well. And I thought about doing further education, but I was like, no, I need to go to work and stuff for now. And then I ended up doing a bunch of just crappy, hilarious jobs. I worked in factories, warehouses, you know, through shit and skips and worked in shops. And after sort of 5 years of that, my sister saw it actually. It was an advert for a junior designer for Auto Trader, of all things. I got a job working there. It was only a 3-man studio and I was running the studio within 6 months just because of the turnover. And it was great because you had to work really quick, really fast sort of moving job. Did that for a couple of years. Then I moved on to like a little advertising agency and we were getting loads of freelancers in and they were earning bundles compared to what we were on. And again, it was on like car adverts and I was like, that's not my bag at all. So through this agency, I left this job after 6-7 months and I started getting some work here and there, but they sent me to EMI Records.
Nice.
Which was such a touch, like for me, you know, being a big music head. And it was like a 2-week holiday cover that turned into, I think, about 6 months. And they just had me doing, you know, at that time, I remember the number 1 Beatles album had come out with the big golden 1 on the front because the windows of EMI were full of all that. And I was working on lots of flyers and leaflets advertising like special nights and like record launch parties, that sort of thing. So that finished up. And I was just looking for jobs here, there and everywhere. And I got a job working off the back of what I'd done at EMI, plus all the stuff. I've always been involved with bands, either playing in them or, you know, putting on nights or club nights. I used to like DJ house music as well. So I was always sort of involved in events and things. So I got a job working for Sold Out Advertising, that are an independent company that worked at the time for SJM, Metropolis, Mean Fiddler, and Clear Channel. They'd just taken, I think Clear Channel had just I'm not quite sure the history. There was another company before them, you know, maybe like a sort of an abbreviated MCP or something like that up in your neck of the woods, I think. And there was a guy working for Clear Channel. I ended up offering to help, and that was my way in, really. So yeah, it was never sort of planned. Everyone I worked with had a degree and sort of found their way in that way, but it was a mixture of sort of luck, circumstance, and working in events already for myself.
I guess if you were into music, did you just feel more natural?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I was already, for myself, putting band logos on things and dates and understanding that people need to know where you're playing, how to get tickets, where, you know, all that sort of fundamental information. You know, sometimes I've had people apply for jobs and I've given them small tests and like the size of a band's logo is like tiny on it. And I'm like, they're going to want it bigger than that, you know? All these like little things that I had to understand. And the speed of the work, yeah, we used to get through, especially because print was still so strong then. You know, some weeks we'd have like a page in every newspaper in the country with like every tour we had going, and the turnover was massive. But because of my background with auto trader and all that sort of thing, I took to it like a duck to water and working quickly, and I'd learn how to proofread. So I sort of, my mistake level was low, and you know,
It's the opposite of me.
really.
I get everything wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's not so good now as I'm getting older, if I'm honest. But yeah, that's how I got into it to begin with. But the music background helped massively, sort of understanding that whole world, what the people are like, having already dealt with agents and managers and stuff from working in pubs, putting gigs on or playing and all that sort of thing. It wasn't a massive stretch for me to do it.
So did working at Clear Channel then sort of like funnel you into Livenation?
So kind of what happened was, at Sold Out at the time, kind of, if you were the newest person in, you'd tend to work on a lot of the smaller clients. So I did things like the jazz cafe listings in Time Out every week, which was a big deal. It was actually quite a tough job, quite a difficult taskmaster that was in charge of that. And, you know, there was, I can't remember the name of the company, but they used to do loads of kind of, not tribute tours, but stuff from the 70s and that with like 1 million dates on it. And the guy that was working on Clear Channel, I noticed he had so much work that I was like, look, can I help him out with that? Because it's way more interesting. It's, you know, bigger artists, more demanding. So I kind of sort of got myself onto that. And at that point, so I was there in 2002 to 2005. And so I did some art working on the first download. And then 2004, I think it was made in America. And then I artworked it that year. And then come sort of the end of 2004, as it would become Livenation, decided they wanted their designers to come and work in-house. So me and the other guy I worked with went to Livenation, and we were there together for, I don't know, another 3 or 4 years. The job moved backwards and forwards another time, but pretty much from that point on, it became Livenation that January. I ran their tour artwork from then, basically, for 20 years now.
Wow. So in those early days, was it graphic design from like the bottom up, or was it more that there's a template and you're just moving a bit around?
I would say back then there was much more sort of starting with a blank page than there is now. Obviously all the programs and software we use that everyone knows about, Photoshop, were all on disk then, and they were so like the cost prohibitive unless you worked for a company or you were doing well as a freelancer. So yeah, a lot of the time it'd be might be a few images of an artist or a band, possibly an album cover. It was rare actually we make tour artwork out of album covers and logos and all the rest of it. But then you were putting it together and hoping a lot of the time there wouldn't be a lot of direction. That's over time that's changed now. But yeah, I would say that back then there was a lot more starting from scratch.
And were you always working in the sort of like rock and alternative side of Livenation or Clear Channel?
They've always had a strong portfolio of acts in those realms, and a lot of the promoters you tend to find like those acts are part of their stable for a lot of the time. So for example, Lee was the guy I worked with. The pair of us must have worked on, I don't know how many Motorhead or Status Quo tours. It would often depend. You got the email first. And it would sometimes be a case of those are one of my favourite bands. I want to work on that. And because the team was so small, between us, we could, work it out who worked on what. We always used to argue, for example, on like who's going to work on the Black Crows, because they were both of us. They were our favourite band.
Did it feel like a dream job then, having that?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it did. Those first, you still get a buzz out of it after this. I still get a buzz out of it after this amount of time. But when you see your stuff, then, opening Kerrang, like a magazine you've bought since you were sort of 13, and there's the first time you see a page of artwork that you've done, it's quite a mind-blowing thing. And that novelty never really wears off, to be honest with you. You don't sort of search it out as much as, like back in the day, everything I did, I'd have to get a copy of it, But now it's more digital anyway, you see. But yeah, and you'd be working on sort of, Kylie 1 minute, Metallica the next, whatever. But I did always try and take most of the sort of the harder, heavier stuff, really.
And how early do you sort of find out about the tour and the artwork that you need to make? Because you know what's going on sort of ahead of everyone else.
I'd say these days it's incredibly quick. We get these round robin emails, itineraries that come around, so it's coming down the pipe, so to speak. But sometimes you'll see an itinerary and then the brief comes like sort of rampaging through the email about an hour after it, and they want the artwork that day. The turnaround can be that quick. It's often measured in hours rather than days or weeks.
That's amazing.
It's
So
super fast.
do you get huge asset packs to work with then?
For the bigger the artist, normally, the easier it is to work on, because what we find these days is a lot of the big tours, it's been made elsewhere. You're regionalising it, and hopefully you've got a thing that has all the different sizes for social media and like Google display networks and everything else. But that presents its own problems. You might get sort of 80, 100, 150 assets, do them all, it goes out, and then like, oh, actually, we want to add the sport band to that. Oh, actually, we're changing the date. Oh, actually, we're putting another date on, that one's sold out. Oh, no, it's not sold out. And so it can sort of avalanche into just this massive, massive stack of work to do. But that kind of stuff it's kind of pre-made and it's easier. A lot of the smaller shows, conversely, can be more difficult. You often get an artwork that's been made by someone who's might be just like a mate of a mate of a band, and you're just trying to make it work, which can be no fonts, for example. It's just like a designer bugbear, that sort of thing. But yeah, the bigger the act, normally the more stuff you have to work with.
When you're designing something for something like Download, are you helping develop the sort of brand guidelines, or are you just being given them?
The best way I can describe that is when I came back to work on Download in 23, all we had was the Download logo, which never changes. There was no real brief for it. They were just, the whole thing needs to kick up the arse. It needs refreshing, have at it. What are people into? And I was like, well, it just needs more. It needs to be punchier. And I was like, just throw lasers at it. Let's make it more neon, because things are so much more digital now. If it had been a print campaign, I probably wouldn't have gone for that style. But there was no brand guidelines. There was no even choosing of the colour scheme. That was just me. I did the X1, and my sort of animation video skills are quite rudimentary because of my background in design. But what I did, Stranger Things had been really in vogue that summer when your man was on the caravan playing Master of Puppets. Yeah. And it really, at the time, I remember seeing that and I was just like, it's just so cool, man. It just reminds me of being that age, And so I made this really sort of like quite basic video of the new artwork with the lasers like flashing, and then I overlaid the intro to Master of Puppets on it with Metallica coming up. They went, here, this is what I've come up with. And everyone went, yeah, okay. They ran with it. It changed hardly at all from that initial concept. It's amazing.
I love that, because at the same time, obviously on a much smaller scale, but with the club, we watched the same thing and was like, we need to rip off all of this and we need to like move the club into looking more Stranger Things, because people are going to love that right now.
Well, it's just a resonation thing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I just thought, whereas before everything, like when one of the first downloads I did from scratch that went really well was when I had all the tattoos around the edge of the artwork, and they were all. This is how old fashioned it was. They were all scanned in from old tattoo magazines. And like, I didn't even know who they belonged to. I just cut them all out, scanned them all in, and made a border of it. And Andy was like, "Brilliant! You've just branded the festival, and on we go." It can be that simple.
How involved was Andy in that sort of process? Was it just you coming up with ideas and him saying yes or no, or?
Well, no, what had happened was, like, I hadn't worked on it for, I don't know, about 7 years. I'd worked on it, sort of beginning artwork in it in, like I said, in like 2003. 2005, 20 years ago, was the first time I designed it from scratch, up through to it would have been 2013. And 2023, the 4-day thing, Andy asked my boss, the marketing director, a chap named Glenn, he's like, "I want Dan to come back and work on it," because I think, I mean, me and Andy get on very well. We have a very similar sort of outlook. We can sit and talk about music rather than the job for long periods of time. And I think he wanted that sort of love and understanding brought back to it. Just one person who gets it, that I can sort of trust to just deliver when I need it, and need it done quick. And that was it. I mean, once I was asked to do it, I played around with it for a couple of weeks, and once I had the idea, it was really fast. Then I presented it to everybody. Everyone liked it, and that was it.
How much back and forth is there with getting the band logos the right size
Well,
and in the right order?
Yeah, I mean, if Andy's watching this, he'll be laughing at this right now. But that is literally a case of the rulers come out. The rulers actually come out to measure.
Right.
Now, obviously, it can be really difficult because of some bands of, Bring Me the Horizon. If you put them next to Kiss, it's difficult, and the shape of the logo, of course, and, make it bigger is always the mantra of everything design. Our logo's now not big enough. Make it 2% bigger. And it is literally that. There's a lot of that goes on. And I think it was 2008 when Kiss were playing, and or 2007, it doesn't matter. But anyway, the old first deadline for Download used to be the following week's Kerrang. Right? So when the Kerrang was weekly, it wasn't announced digitally or anything else. That first full page. So I've done it. It's gone off to the publishers. I remember that night. It was all done. You finish a bit late and you're like, "I'm so pleased it's over and approved." I'd gone to the pub to meet a friend, and I literally hit the first drop of lager touched my lip and my phone rang. And it was Andy, and he was like, "Mate." I was like, "What's up, Andy?" He was, "Mate." And he was trying to find old versions of the artwork to convince Kiss's management that you can't have your logo bigger than everyone else's. And, when we did Black Sabbath, funnily enough, with System of a Down and Feeder, and they had Ozfest above Sabbath. There's all these things we had to do to keep it the same size. And so I had to come back in at work and find all these old versions to show Kiss that no one gets to, but it's all the agents. Yeah. There's this massive pissing contest that obviously goes on behind the scenes. And I will get emails saying, "Make this particular logo 2% bigger. This one 3%. And it's that specific. And you just have to kind of laugh it off and keep it as clean and as lined up as possible. But yeah, there's a lot of that. There's a lot, and it never really stops. And that you can take all those same band logos and whatever they're on and cut and paste them onto something else. Send it, and they'll go, "Nope, you've made that bigger. You've made it bigger." It's like, I really haven't.
Does that sort of just get worse the bigger the festival is in terms of like the bands, or is it just if you're working on a small all-dayer, you still get the same shit?
On a smaller day, you probably wouldn't get it as much. Like when we did the Slayer thing recently, obviously Slayer's going to be huge. Yeah. The other bands, we kept them all pretty much, I think, exactly the same size, I think. With Download, I mean, just from my own knowledge of the bands and who's playing, that's changed year on year. Like often when we first used to launch, it would just be 3 bands, or we might just launch with one headliner, then, But the last couple of years, we've put a lot of bands out straight off the bat. So I have a sort of an inkling of the hierarchy of, I hate that sort of idea of who's bigger than who, because, it's all subjective, isn't it? But I have an idea of how that lineup's got to look when it's listed down. There's some years where we've done it all in type with no band logos, which obviously is a great equaliser for doing that. But yeah, I tend to look at it like it's going to be those 3 columns of days and work it out on that basis, and then it will go off and they'll come back. There'll be loads of voices coming back. Well, this should be bigger, that should be smaller. Why are they above them? And I just let it.
Where does the decision to go with type over logos come from?
That would come from the top of the festival. That would come from an Andy or Cam. If that's the way they wanted to go with it. We kind of chopped and changed it with 23, I think. I know we did some versions where it was just all type and some with logos, especially when we got near the very final lineup. So at that point where everyone wants to know who's on what day, who's on what stage, even more importantly, at that point then it sort of gets more organised. I mean, I kind of like graphically what Hellfest do, where they keep all the bands quite small. I think in some ways you can see them all better. I don't think it makes one band look like they're bigger than another, but that's that sides of not ego, but you know, the prestige. This is agents and managers' business. It's something I don't really.
Most of the bands probably don't care as much as the agent wanting to look like they're doing a good job for the band.
I should think so. That's kind of the name of the game, isn't it? I think a lot of the time the bands themselves probably couldn't give a shit.
Yeah.
As long as they're on and they're getting paid and they're going to do the job, you know, they're not sitting there going, oh, our logo's 2% smaller than this one. Oh, you know what I mean? It's definitely agents and managers.
Yeah. Do you have much artwork that comes back as just a flat rejection and you have to start again with a new concept?
Oh, yeah, that's happened loads of times over the years. Now, you know, one thing that every designer, I think in any industry they're designing in, will tell you is all designers are expected to be fucking psychic. It's a big part of your portfolio of powers is to be psychic and just know what people want. But without any guidance, you are literally stumbling around in the dark. You know, I'll be like, what colours do you not like? Do you like old-fashioned fonts? No, more modern. You know, is there a particular... And sometimes you get nothing. And you almost have to design in a vacuum that will prompt people to tell you what they want. I've had situations in the past where someone will be, you know, could have 5 or 6 options. And you'll come up with 1 or 2 you think that really works and throw a couple of shit ones in just to sort of pad out the time. And invariably, it's a really bad idea because they will always pick the one you hate the most. You know, I'm going to do one in brown and it's really shabby. They're like, yeah, that's the one. That's the winner. But yeah, you do get flat out, you know, nope, we don't like it. We hate everything about it. And in that case, I mean, you have to have a thick skin about it. There are occasions where you might get another designer to take a look at it with different eyes. Maybe they're more into that genre than you are. That's quite helpful.
Is that something that you see on your team, that if somebody takes it well, they're a good person to work with, and if they get precious, you don't want them around?
I mean, I've never had a situation where someone's been so precious that they can't be told. I mean, it can hurt someone's feelings. Obviously, if you create something from nothing, it's much like being in a band and you create some music and someone says, it's just not good enough. It's not good enough. It's shit. You know, no one wants to hear that. And I think sometimes people forget the designers, creatives generally, we're the closest relative to the things we make money out of. Comedians, bands, artists, musicians, it's all kind of from the same pot. It's all creating something. And no one wants to be told what they've created is rubbish. But I think sometimes you kind of know when you send something across if it's not quite, you might be time pushed. So there's always going to be a bit of a crunch in that I need to get something over for them to see, rather than I've got to keep working on it until it looks good. But yeah, I've not had anyone that's that precious about it that I can't say, look, you know, you can do better than that. Or I'd always approach it more of a, not so much you can do better than that, but how about this? I think what they're looking for is, here's some example, maybe, you know, switch this up, change that around. And that's how I try and approach it, try and help them get to where it needs to be.
What other things do you have to sort of think about when you're doing the design at the start, or you're putting together some guidelines other than just the poster, like merch and banners?
I think, especially if I'm doing something from scratch, in the back of my mind is always the fact that I'm going to have to make this loads of different sizes for loads of different uses, and I'm going to need to do it quickly. So it's not so much like you pump the brakes on what you're designing, but it's very different. You know, if you're creating a bit of art that's going to be bespoke, and it's for like we often do like congratulations things that are given to bands and managers. I did a collage of download artwork that Sleep Token had been on from like the 4th stage to the top stage, and made their logo in gold. So it shows that journey for them. Something like that, you can be a little bit more esoteric in your design a bit, because it's a one-off and you're not going to have to change it around. But, nuts and bolts of it is, I know that it's going to have to be, like the size of a postage stamp, or it might be on the side of a bus or on the side of a building, So there's part of that I'm always thinking, I have to make this so many different sizes for so many different uses. And not only that, if someone else has to work on it after me, that they can open it and go, yeah, this makes sense. I know what to do with it. We get sent work sometimes that's got like 300 layers of it in Photoshop, and you're like, there's no need for most of it, really. And that person hasn't thought about down the line who's going to use it.
We even have that for us in the office with the the club and the gigs that we put on. Are there any sort of events or tours that you've worked on where you just couldn't believe that you were lucky enough to be involved in?
Loads of them, really. Anytime you work on a band that you've loved since you were sort of 13 or 14 is a pinch yourself moment. I mean, there's a few that spring to mind. When Guns N' Roses got back together with Slash, Axl and Duff, 2016, 2017. And they were a formative band for me. I was, 13 in 87. And that was the first album that sort of flipped the table over for me. It was aggressive, and they were my band as a kid. So when that came round, I'd worked with them when it was just Axl before. I'd added their logo on Download when it was just Axl, and that was cool. But to have the proper, the Bullet logo, and to put that on something, that was a huge buzz for me. But I think the one that really hit home, other than the Sabbath thing recently, was working on Pantera when they came back. I'd gotten into them when I was 17, like before they really exploded. Just as an aside, I had a friend. Everyone had that one mate who was from quite a wealthy family back then, who had Sky or B Sky B or whatever, and he used to record me Headbangers Ball. And on the very first tape he gave me, I remember the first 3 tracks were Man in a Box by Alice in Chains, Cowboys from Hell by Pantera, and I think Surgery Gates by Pantera. And that was it. I was like, this band sound like nothing else. And then obviously, with what happened with Dimebag and his brother, for them to come back, and then for them to play Download last year, and it's the only time I've ever managed to blank side of stage to watch Pantera from the side of the stage. And I'm looking out at the crowd in the sunshine, and when I was at college, I'd done a project where I'd sort of ripped off the cover of Vulgar Display, photocopied it a bunch of times, turned it into a tour poster, right? And I'd met them at a record signing that I'd found about that day on my way to college, and that's all I had for him to sign. And I remember Phil Anselmo looking at it and going, fucking bootleg poster, man, Jesus, and like signing it and thinking it was hilarious. So I'm standing there at the side of the stage watching him and the guys, looking out at the crowd, and I just, I thought, for every tour I've worked on that was a pain in the arse. And luckily not many times, any promoter that was ever rude to me or like spoke down to me, or any time where the job wasn't enjoyable, it was worth it for that moment, because you just, that circular nature of your life had come around. That's the one that will always stick out. That, and obviously the Sabbath thing this weekend, they were a massive part of my growing up as well.
How did that come about then? How did you get that?
I was under the impression that something was happening. I didn't know if it was going to be a tour or a show, or it was just a Sabbath. I knew something was happening with Sabbath, and I was quite excited about that. I was like, sort of, I think one of the campaign managers had said to me, there's something coming up with Sabbath, not quite sure what. And then it kind of dropped really quickly. I got sent, I think Andy actually sent it direct to me. It was just that really old picture of the 4 of them. And I think Sharon had said something about having Villa Park sort of fades in the background, if they could look like they're sitting on the steps or whatever. So it kind of designed itself a little bit, it's Sabbath, black, purple, bit of white, a bit dirty, sort of cream colour. There's a picture of them, and it just came together quickly. And like with all festival things, I know how to lay out all the bands, and again, those changed loads of times, who's bigger than who, which, all that sort of thing. I kept it quite simple, and that on, at the weekend, just realising how many people have seen it, because it's probably the first thing I've done that would have been seen internationally, because the amount of people who've bought tickets, the people sitting next to us were from Czech Republic, met people from Brazil and all the rest of it. So that was a big deal. But the Pantera one will stick with me forever, I think. That.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Yeah, it didn't occur to me that actually like Download isn't international. It's obviously like...
No, I mean, they did one in Australia, didn't they?
Yeah.
1 or 2.
I mean, I know that there have been like a couple downloads like around Europe.
I mean,
I'm
sure sort of like devoted metalheads, or people who are into that sort of music, are aware it's happening and watch. But there's no streams of it these days. But a few years ago, when there was more sort of footage, you'd be watching it. But it doesn't have that same. It doesn't have that sort of international brand identity
in the same way that Sabbath.
Yeah,
genuinely
that was kind of like Heavy Metal Live Aid, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And like half of the bands playing that are like in my top 10 bands that I love. And so it's just amazing to be part of that.
Awesome. You've mentioned before that you had a couple near-death experiences.
Yeah.
With one at Download.
Yeah. So 2009, Andy had said to me, I was in a band at the time called Orgabane, sort of like a bit of a mixture of Black Label Society and Soundgarden and Alterbridge, maybe, I don't know, bit of Motorhead in there perhaps. And he'd said, do you want to play? And I was like, of course we want to play. And it was on the Red Bull stage? I don't know, it was the smallest stage on the Saturday morning. So I'm driving up there. I had an old black Jeep Cherokee. I loved this thing. And I had my girlfriend at the time, the lead guitarist and his girlfriend at the time, a couple of the amps and the rest of it in my van, in my truck. And the bass player and the drummer were following in a little van. And our bass player, Max, was from Brazil. Very Rob Trujillo, how do you pronounce his surname? Trujillo? I don't know. The guy from Metallica. He's got that style,
I know what you... I don't know.
He's got that kind of bass playing style, and like, he's got that, hey man, kind of way of talking. And he called me up. And we were about 20 miles from Donington. And he called me up from behind. He's like, hey man, your back wheel's wobbling, man. I was like, oh, fuck, I better get off. I'm doing about 80 and I'm in the middle lane. Luckily, it was just dead quiet. I got off the phone, and no sooner as I got off the phone, I felt the back of the Jeep go, and the wheel had come off at 80 miles an hour. It literally come off. And do you know what? To this day, I don't know where the wheel went. The wheel was never found. It could have been like buried within a cow 3 miles away. Who fuck knows? But so we went into like a 360 spin, and I started screaming, fuck. And by the time I hit the K and fat, we'd gone backwards into the metal barrier on the hard shoulder. And as we're spinning, and it's people tell you these things happen in slow motion, and it's absolutely 100% true. As we're spinning round, there's a 18-wheeler coming towards us. And it was like the Final Destination movies?
Yeah.
It was exactly like that. Exactly like that. And I looked at this thing, and I was like, well, that's that then. This is a story that people will tell. And we keep going, and it just flies past, and we hit the barrier. And everyone's sitting there just like touching themselves. Like, it was so close. It was so close. To this day, I still can't believe that we all walked away from that and then did the gig the next morning. In fact, there's footage of us playing that show, and I'm wearing sunglasses, which is not something I'd ever do on stage because I'm not that sort of person. But I got so pissed the night before, just out of nerves, that my eyeballs were a disgrace the next morning. It's like, there's no way anyone's looking at me in the eye when I'm doing this show at 11:30 in the morning on Saturday. So yeah, that was one of my few close saves.
Was that like to calm the nerves of the crash, or to like?
It was just
steady the
aftershock
nerves of having to play the next day.
We had to get everything scooped up from the road into the van, get there, put our tent. We were camping, so we put our tents up, and I just didn't know what else to do with myself. I would never, singing live at 11:30 in the morning. The last thing you want to do is have a day of just smoking and drinking before it. But my nerves were just shot.
Did you get to put your own band on on the poster?
Yeah.
Like, that must have been fucking cool.
Yeah, it was. It was super cool. In fact, pre-COVID, we call them 60 by 40s, 60 by 40 posters in frames. And in the old Live Nation offices, we had loads of them framed up. And I had that one, 2009, behind me on the wall in our old office. But then COVID happened, and I don't know whatever happened to it.
Did you put yours 2% bigger than?
Yeah, that's strange. That band at the very bottom of the poster, big, but no, the fact that we were on there,
Yeah.
that's, you know, and like when we was at we went up and had a look in the merch mega store at Download, which is a huge thing now. It didn't even exist when I was first going. And looking through the poster rack and going, I did that, and just check for 2009. I'm like, yeah, it's still there.
Nice.
I didn't imagine it. It did happen.
What has changed since starting then? Sort of like in the way that the industry works for you?
But in a sort of, in the most basic sense, it is that sort of change from print to digital. It wasn't overnight. You could see it coming. And I'm kind of glad it did, because when we used to do print, it could be so tedious. Like I say, you might put once a week a page in every local paper in the country. Like at the end of the month when it's getting their payday, that might be 50 pages split between maybe 2 or 3 designers, all with the same 10 adverts in their paper, but regionalised for that area. All the page sizes were slightly different. And it was just, and then getting that approved, there might be 6 promoters who've got work on that page. My advert's too small, my advert's too big, I can't read it. You know, the whole thing was very monotonous. And over time that's changed. I mean, I don't like to see the kind of death of print in terms of magazines, because I used to love to read a good magazine. I can't remember the last time I picked one up. Probably looking for some of my artwork, to be fair. So that was a gradual thing, and that's changed a lot. And like I say, like the tendency for a lot of artwork to come in pre-made. And sometimes the creative part of it is working out the solution to how we're going to use this for everything we need for it. And obviously video is a massive part of everything now. Everyone wants a video to go on Instagram and you name it, TikTok. So that's huge. Just the internet generally, like the impact it's had on everything in the world. But when it comes to advertising anything, especially stuff that's so immediate, as we're announcing this, tickets are on sale then, you know, who's got time to wait for a newspaper to come out now?
Has that shortened deadlines because it can just be like, we can finish it today and announce it today, whereas before you had to send it off and it needed to be printed?
I mean, sometimes it can be a case of we're announcing this tomorrow, we've got no artwork yet. And you're kind of like, right. And you're waiting for something to come from the States, and you don't know what kind of state it's going to turn up in, whether it's going to be usable, whether it's going to be layered. Oftentimes the artwork will turn up and it's completely flat and you can't do anything with it. You know, you can't change the dates on it, you know, stuff like that. We'll always find a workaround. Nothing's really hit the floor and not happened as a result of these things. Sometimes they might put back the on sale, but normally with the bigger the show, those on sales, they're going to happen.
With your role then, with things like that, are you working more set hours or more just
it is
something needs doing?
I've always tried to sort of, I suppose because of my background, I like to work quickly and efficiently. I can get more done working in sort of 7 or 8 hours fast than I can working till 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. Because I can't, for me personally, I don't like to work like that, and I don't like my team to really be that 24 hours a day designing thing. Unless that, you know, if that's how you want to work, okay. But we tend to sort of put our foot on the gas and go and help each other out. You know, there's always sort of peaks and troughs. The team, years ago, there was 2 or 3 of us. Now I've got like 7 designers, and everyone's got specialities kind of thing, and got their own acts they like to work on. And often be in case of it, if it goes crazy, someone else will jump on it with you and help it all get done. But by and large, we don't, as a rule, touch wood, work stupidly long hours. I think long term it's not healthy, really.
You mentioned before that you'd struggled with imposter syndrome. Is that around the sort of level of acts that you were dealing with?
I think for me, it was more of the fact that being really conscious of everyone I was around had been at university and had all the right qualifications as designers and had all the right things they could point at that they'd learned. Most of the things I'd learned had been taught to me by other designers working on the job. You know, the way I talk to people, it comes from a more, I suppose, working class kind of background. I suppose there are people that say I can be abrasive, really, but it comes more from a place of expediency and dishonesty. It's just like, this is the issue. This is what I think we can do to solve it. Or I think what you're saying is bullshit. And it's just the way I am. And there was always that sense of, do I really fit in around all these people? But, you know, for an imposter, I've been doing it an awful long time.
When you're putting people into the team or building a team, do you care about the qualification, or are you more interested in the experience?
I've actually, the last 2 or 3 designers I've employed, the job descriptions, I've had the qualifications things taken off. Because if that had been the case for me, I'd never got the job. So we tend to put, you know, a qualification or equivalent experience or desire. And that's more important to me. Because the thing is, obviously, if we put a job ad out for a designer to come and work at Livenation, you can imagine how many applicants that gets. And we get them from all over the world. Some people will just see Livenation and apply for the job, and they've never designed anything, you know. So we'll often put, you know, a qualification or equivalent experience, but it's not a deal breaker. If I see the work and I meet the person, I think you'll fit in doing this. That's more important to me.
Have you had any really ridiculous?
Well, applicant. Well, I've had people that work in accounting. I'd like to be a designer. Oh, well, you know, fair play to you, mate. You know, have you designed anything? No. Brilliant. They've literally just seen it, and like, they've get applicants from Brazil. I need a visa. I've got relevant experience now. And I'm incredulous. I'm incredulous that you thought Britain's become devoid of designers. We can't find any. We're having to I'm out now.
Is it everyone in the office together collaborating, or is it like remote?
No, it's for me and my team, we're pretty much remote 100% of the time now. With the beautiful offices, but with the amount of people that work for the company post-COVID, there aren't enough seats for everybody to be in all the time. So you tend to hot desk. For designers, that's not really ideal. It's not for me. I like, you know, my screen's at home, everything's calibrated, everything doesn't move around. And office life never felt like a great fit for me anyway, really. There's times when with office work where we had an actual studio where you have a space that's just, you can sit there, and designers have quite bleak humour, and, you know, we can let rip at whatever job that's come through, and that's the vent that lets out the stress. But when you're all kind of dotted around, it's kind of pointless. You know, there are times when I go in to speak about download and stuff like that when it's important, so we'll have some face-to-faces. Or we all jump on Zooms if need be. But I'm quite happy for my team to be pretty autonomous. Everyone kind of knows what they're doing. Everyone's pretty quick to tell me if something's an issue. It's a bit like Hungry Hippos, the way the jobs come in. We have a central kind of email. People who either have an enthusiasm for their act, or they're not busy, and, oh, can I do that one? Can I do this? And so there's a bit of, you know, bartering. I'll take this one if you take that one. And now these days, my job's become a bit more about sort of overseeing those guys doing it, rather than I don't put every sold out on the artwork and every extra date and every support band as I used to. So because half of my job is downloads, which takes up so much time.
How much time is spent on downloads specifically?
Well, I mean, if it was up to certain stakeholders, I'd have designed next year's before this one would have even happened. But I don't like to do that. I like to enjoy the event and have that enthusiasm rolling for it, that I look forward to working on it again. I mean, this year's one with the aquatic theme and stuff, we actually, when we do like the download early bird things, we'll just put the logo out with a colour around it. And last year I put that sort of teal glow around download. And I just, you know, you look at it and it just says water and, you know, krakens, pirate ships, whatever the fuck it was going to be. But we were looking at it while we was in the field at last year's download, saying, yeah. I mean, I think it was raining at the time, so that also helped. So I started designing it in my head. And it's the same for what we're doing next year. In my head, I kind of know what it's going to look like.
It's going to be red because it was hot.
Possibly. Hey? You've done this before. So yeah, next year's I've kind of designed it in my head, and then one afternoon I'll just bang it straight out. But I don't want to get into a thing where I kind of dread working on it because it's just happened. So yeah, there's bits of it that are being put together now, but it'll be more so sort of after the summer when I really, once I do it, it'll be really quick. It'll be like an afternoon and I've designed it.
Does the artwork lead to other things being decided? So I'm thinking like this year there was the jerseys, and they looked insanely cool.
I spoke to I think like anyone creating merch, the folks from Mary Wyatt, those kind of people, they were all really happy with the colour scheme. I think it made their lives quite easy, that colour scheme. And it looked like on the digital screens and stuff, those big 4-tower screens we have, it just looks so, it was really punchy. So the challenge for me next year is going to be obviously not using that colour again, but to have that same kind of impact that all look good on everything. And that'll be my challenge.
Do you have to change the colour each year? Or is that a rule?
I mean, it isn't a rule, I suppose. I mean, when I came back in 23 and did the lasers, the next year we did the lasers again, but we slightly tweaked the colours a bit. And then last year we had this idea. And so people then presumed, oh, it's going to be the elements for the next 4 years. Well, no, not at all. That's not, we might do elements next year. The year after do something completely different. I mean, I do have ideas for 27. I was thinking about this yesterday, actually, with the Roman numerals, is that I really like how they look. But, long live download. If we hit download 30, are we going to have download XXX? Which, creates its own problems and memes, doesn't it?
For me, I'd wait 30 years just to get that. I would have been like, right, if this is going to last.
We're going to play the long game with this.
It looks a bit naff right now where it's just a 1.
Make it look like a poster from a seedy 70s, like, porn comedy. There we go, download.
Well, that's when it needs to be red, isn't it?
Oh, there you go, you can do it. I can have the year off.
Sorted. What are the common sort of misconceptions around the design work?
Misconceptions would be that you get to meet the bands, talk to the artists, and have that level of involvement. You don't. It's really, if you ever meet people from bands, it might be by accident. You get the odd artist or especially comedian that wants that level of involvement. Comedians especially, like I've done quite a lot of Ricky Gervais stuff, and I just picked a font to put his name in one day, and he's used it ever since, which is quite a cool thing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
When he had a photo shoot for this latest tour where he's got the black angel's wings, I was sent loads of photos of that to pick out which would work best, and so that's really nice. Now, comedians are quite cool like that. They like that level of involvement. But yeah, generally, it's. I think for a lot of people, any kind of job you do in the industry is going to be more glamorous to them than it actually is. It's still a job, It's just better than some other jobs.
What advice would you give to somebody that wanted to get into graphic design, but then also
if
music?
They want to get into what we do, you just got to do it. I think the level of involvement with your own project. I mean, we're in an era of the self-starter now. Things like this, podcasts. I love podcasts and all these independent things that people start up. I think it's great. The amount of people I spoke to download this year that were journalists from YouTube and this, and this is their passion. This is what they want to do. And I think that's great. And it kind of comes back to what you were saying about when people apply for the job. Do stuff for your local band, local bands that local DJ night. Is there a pub near you that has live music on? Unfortunately, there's not many of them anymore. Or club nights, student club nights. If there's nothing near you that you can maybe offer your services to, create it yourself. What's your dream festival? Who's the headliners? But make it look like this could actually be an event, not just a dream. That would be my thing, is do it. Make the stuff up. If you're, I was in bands. I was designing before I performed in bands. I did it the other way around. I'd always wanted to play in bands, and I started singing a long time after I started designing. And it's just the way it is. But that would be my main thing, is just start doing it. If there's no one who will take your services on for nothing, then create them yourself. Because I think what sets apart everyone I've ever interviewed for a job, everyone says they love music, but they don't. Loving music's not la-la-laing along to whatever's playing on the radio when you're in the car. Loving music is buying a ticket for the gig, buying the T-shirt, buying the Rarities album that comes out, every news story about, that's loving music when you really are into it. And so when I've interviewed people and I look through their work and you can see that love of, they've done bespoke things for artists they love, you know, that they've sent off and have been used. One of the guys who works for me has done some stuff for Drake. There's been stuff for punk bands that other people have worked on, stuff for pop acts like Sugar Babes and Spice Girls, whatever. That would be my main thing, is put your enthusiasm into doing some work. Because if you turn up with a portfolio full of jewellery catalogues or Mercedes-Benz stuff, it might be great design. I know everyone who I'm going to interview can do the job technically, but are you plugged in? Is this what you love? That would be the main thing, is just put that love into it and do it yourself. Do it yourself, because there's only so many jobs doing what we do. There's not loads. So they come up rarely. So if you want to set yourself apart, that would be my number one thing.
Circling back a little bit, when we used to do things with Download with the club, they'd send us an asset pack with all the different things. Is it you that puts that together?
Pretty much. And not only do I put it together, I seem to put it together about 300 fucking times every download and have to re-send it out loads, because whoever I send it to just loses it. So like every version of the logo in every format, I make the style guide to it now, which is why I like part of my job title is creatively, because I am. It starts with me, the colours and the look and all the rest of it. And I'm so proud of it. You know, when I'm at the festival working there now, whereas all the years before I went as a guest camper and just got smashed all weekend. Now when I walk around, and there's not a lot of designers we have to do on site. We'll be sort of cutting together the humans of Download videos, that sort of thing. But you walk around and see everything that's bled out from what you started. It's a great feeling. And the amount of people who actually came to me this year and wanted to talk about it, and you know, what do you do? And it's like, well, I did that. And they're like, oh my God. And it's after this long doing it, the sort of sense of validation, it does kick imposter syndrome square in the plums after all that time. Just about.
That's awesome. The all the style guides that we do for the club and the charity and everything are actually based off the original ones that I got.
Really?
It must have been like years ago now, but yeah. So
Excellent.
the layout and everything that we use is
Superb.
directly ripped from me being like, oh, the Download one's really good. Let's copy that.
Well, you've got my email now, Jack. So if you ever need that, mate, I'll hook you up. No problem.
That's a really cool thing to know that it's actually you that did it. Is there anything else you wanted to sort of mention or promote before we finish?
Promotion, but I mean, I've been quite lackadaisical in sort of self promotion, because obviously I do the job I do. I don't sort of do so much music anymore, like on a personal level. I am trying to put together a site of all my work, just for legacy sake, really, rather than looking for anything from it. Just as a record of what I have done over the years, and just, you know, I look through old work, and like in what we do, time goes so quickly because you're constantly on a deadline and there's constantly another tour. There's never a point where we go, oh, that's enough tours for this year. Let's all have 3 weeks off. So I want to make a record of everything I've done that I enjoyed working on or had a particularly creative part of. That's the next project, I think.
I think if you did that and you give an explanation of where the idea came from, people would love that. Like being able to go through a year of Download that they liked, or the Black Sabbath thing or whatever, and like understand where all that design, the ideas come from. I think that's really cool.
How it starts, like the whole process kind of thing. Especially with now, I'm not great at animation, for example, but I can edit video and put that together. I might sort of film some of that sort of stuff, and it's been quite a good resource for people, I think.
Awesome, man. Well, we'd definitely love to see that, and definitely would like to share it when it's actually available.
Brilliant.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming and talking, man. It's been great speaking.
Yeah, welcome. I hope it was interesting.
Definitely. I think people will really enjoy just like hearing where the ideas come from, and some of it as well being so natural and organic, and it just being like, oh, we picked blue because we picked blue and then it rained, and
that's the mood we're in.
It's nice hearing that that's where it sort of comes from.
Yeah, but it's a creative thing. Sometimes the ideas are just like, they're just there, you know, and you hope people see the same thing you do. That's it.
Amazing, man. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you to everyone that's listened. If you want to watch us, we're available on YouTube. Please follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks, guys.